Flowers are a little bit of an addiction, and the more I grow, the more I want to grow, the more I'm excited to grow.
Ann Hall's addiction to flower growing is a boon to Catskills designers, florists, restaurants, and individuals who want a fresh supply of locally grown, chemical-free flowers in another league from generic supermarket fare. In February, we put out an episode on Jaritas, a local florist serving the Catskills for 45 years. One of our listeners heard that episode and said, "Hey, how about a story on a local grower?" Well, we love listener suggestions, and we were interested to know more about growing flowers in the Catskills. So here we are, at Crespell, a queer women-owned flower farm and CSA. More on that in a bit. In Lexington, New York.
When I left the city, I had been teaching for 8 years, college courses in photography, and I decided that I didn't care if I was making yogurt or making art or growing flowers. I just wanted to be making something and not talking about it anymore. My name is Ann Hall, and I'm the owner and founder of Crespell, which is a specialty cut flower farm in Lexington, New York. We use only organic inputs here. The name is from the family who built my stone house, which is what drew me to the land. They built the stone house in 1783. The piece of property is 155 acres. And there's a little stone house kind of in the center of it. And that's how I found this place. And I guess like the combination of color and cultivation led me to flowers. And so 4 years ago, I attempted to grow flowers for the first time at more of a commercial scale. And so I had 3 or 4 75-foot beds, and it worked. And so then the next year, I guess, was 2020, which was the first, maybe, was the pandemic happening in the summer of 2020, I think so. And so it was kind of a weird first year, but it was kind of good for me to have less pressure so I could focus more on the infrastructure of the farm. And so I started selling to designers. We primarily sell wholesale. We also offer flowers to our local community through a CSA. And so kind of each year it's just grown exponentially. And now we are growing probably 3 acres in perennials, about 1 acre of peonies, and 2 acres in annuals.
As a former member of a CSA, it was a vegetable CSA, and I remember getting a lot of kale. What kind of flowers would I expect to see in a flower CSA?
Yeah, so we do a CSA that runs for 24 weeks of the year. Each season runs for 8 weeks. And you can choose weekly or every other week. And it's definitely the most economical way. You get more stems, better prices than wholesale. So the season starts out with definitely the fanciest, most elegant flowers of the season, which are the ranunculus, the anemones, and the specialty tulips. So we have about, maybe 12 different varieties of ranunculus, maybe 8 different kinds of anemones, 7 different specialty tulips, 5 different narcissus, which are daffodils. As we transition into summer, poppies will come. We have about 3,000 lisianthus, which we're growing, which are an incredible flower. They're nicknamed the Rose of the Northeast. They're super long stems. They last for about 3 weeks. One of the pieces of feedback I get from our customers all the time is like they can't believe how long they last. And, the last week's flowers are still going when they get the next week. So a lot of people do the every other week because they do last so long. This year, we're really going hard with the delphiniums, and so we're growing pink delphiniums, white delphiniums, every shade of blue. We grow mountain mint, euphorbia, lavender. We grow heirloom chrysanthemums, which each flower is about 6 inches wide. And then our fall, late summer, major excitement offering are dahlias. And we grow about 700 dahlias, the ball type of dahlia, which have the longest stem life or vase life, We love snapdragons here. And a lot of the things that we grow, the flower type might be familiar, but the variety is totally different or something that you've never seen. We grow pink sunflowers, black sunflowers, green sunflowers, just kind of like colors that you've never seen.
Crespell offers spring, summer, and fall CSA shares with weekly or bi-weekly deliveries to Kingston, Mount Tremper, and Windham. And because Crespell caters to designers, CSA members can expect some extraordinary blooms.
We grow all these pretty exceptional, fancy flowers, but sometimes a designer will have a very specific palette that they need to work within. I have one designer right now who's, so we have salmon ranunculus, and she needs only the ones that are a muted orange. And there's a whole range within that variety from kind of a coral to a pale muted orange. But so she wants me to select only the ones that are the lighter orange. Now the coral ones are also beautiful. And so then our CSA members get these designer quality flowers that just happen to be the color that the designers can't use that week. So it's all of the most insane, exceptional, fancy things that you would see at a wedding. And it's just the off colors for that week.
Throughout her career in art and photography, Anne has been drawn most to color, and flower growing is no exception.
I think as an artist, it's always helpful to have something to push against. And so as a grower, that thing that I'm pushing against is weather, or is my growing zone, or is the time of year. And I've also done, a lot of painting and sculpture. And for a while, what I was pursuing artistically was color. And so the thing that I was pushing against was a quality of color. What I was after was this kind of like luminous color. And so I was doing color photography, and then I started photographing snowflakes, and I was blowing dry pigment onto the snowflakes to have that like translucent color happen. Then I got into working with natural dyes, because there's this cool thing with dyes where the color is actually bonding with the fabric. It's not sitting on top of it. And then I got into glass blowing. I got into silk painting. Then I got into flowers because I saw flowers and noticed the insane layers of iridescent color that were happening in their petals. And if you look closely at a flower, it's just the most insanely gorgeous thing you've ever seen. And there's this funny thing where it's like, well, why? Like, flowers aren't designed for us. They're designed for insects. So why are we also attracted to them? And for me, it's absolutely that luminous color. You rarely see colors in nature that you would think to yourself, like, those colors just don't look good together. And so, looking at these parrot tulips that are going into our CSA today, it's like the transitions from cream to coral, and then with these kind of just like, it's almost like it rubbed up against some green paint and just got these little rubbings of green on the outside edges of the petal. It's just, I wouldn't have thought of that. Looks great.
More from Anne Hall and the colors she grows in a moment. But first, a few words from our local sponsors. Cat's Cast is sponsored by the Mountain Eagle, covering Delaware, Greene, and Schoharie counties, including brands for local regions like the Windham Weekly, Schoharie News, and Catskills Chronicle. For more information, call 518-763-6854 or email mountaineaglenews@gmail.com. And by the 52-mile Catskill Mountains Scenic Byway, following New York State Route 28 through the heart of the Central Catskills. For maps, itineraries, and links to area restaurants, shops, and accommodations, visit sceniccatskills.com. This episode is also supported by Hanford Mills Museum. Explore the power of the past as you watch the water wheel bring a working sawmill to life. Bring a picnic to enjoy by the mill pond. For more information about scheduling a tour or about their new exploration days, visit hanfordmills.org or call 607-278-5744. Someone once said of Scotland, there are two seasons, June and winter. A familiar sentiment in the Catskills, with its long season of cold and its short season for, say, tomatoes. But Crespell grower Ann Hall welcomes our seasonal limitations.
As a grower, that thing that I'm pushing against is weather, or is my growing zone, or is the time of year. And so I think it's, about shifting people's mindset in terms of like thinking that it's a bad thing if you can't have whatever you want when you want it, to thinking it's actually this opportunity. Instead of having this limitless idea of like, well, what flower would I want? It's like, well, what flower does the land around me want to give me? And that's actually this like exciting thing to relinquish that control. Having that like tether to our weather is super compelling to me. And I think like in a time when I can demand all kinds of things like on my doorstep the next day, there's something kind of refreshing about being subjected to the limitations of your local climate. We do a lot of fall planting, so all the peonies, all the bulbs go in the fall. We do have 4 tunnels up right now. We have 6 that we could put up. They're super useful, not just for extending the season, but also for, it's weird. You'd think that plants would love rain, but actually flowers really don't like to be rained on, and so it helps with protecting them as well.
Anne showed me to one of the tunnels, or hoop houses, where early spring flowers, anemones and ranunculus were growing, with protections from a forecasted heat wave.
This is our largest tunnel. The temperature's going up. Tomorrow it's going to be 90, so we have the fans going to try to keep it cool. Another thing we do to keep the tunnel cool is we actually will run the irrigation, and so it will cool it off right at the plant level. Tomorrow's 90-degree day is a little scary for us, and we actually painted the outside of this greenhouse with a white paint to shade it. You can see that it's actually a little bit shady in here right now. They're actually going to be cooler in here than they would if they were outside of the tunnel. And that paint will slowly wear off with rain. So we actually plant all of these in the fall. And so the ground doesn't freeze in here. And that is essential to all of these things overwintering.
How do you protect it from natural pests?
You'll see in the Lisianthus tunnel, and actually here, what's wadded up here is some netting. And so we actually introduce beneficial insects. I work with a integrated pest manager, and I will tell them, for example, with these anemones, sometimes we have aphids. And so they prescribe a program that's a series of beneficial insects. And so each week I get a delivery of a little box of bugs.
So you're a member of a bug CSA.
Yes, exactly. Yep, weekly delivery. I am very happy with my bug CSA. And I'll put it under the netting in here and release them. And then either they eat the aphids, or sometimes they will actually lay eggs inside the aphids. Beneficial insects is one way that we manage pests. Another is by growing things that don't have a lot of pests. I love sweet peas. They have too many aphids for me to deal with. So we're not growing. This is the first year we don't have sweet peas because I don't want to use pesticides. We do use neem oil. You can actually even use just like water. Spraying water will get a lot of the aphids off, or we go around and squish them. And then we also plant what you call trap crops, which are crops that the bugs that you don't want will actually prefer. And so they'll go over to that rather than touching the crop that you don't want them to touch. So we plant alyssum interplanted with the Lisianthus in that tunnel.
Pesticide-free flowers are harvested from Crespell's tunnels and fields and transferred to a walk-in refrigerator on the other side of the farm. where we returned so Anne could prepare some wholesale orders for that day's pickup.
Okay, so David wants a bunch of narcissus, cheerfulness. Okay, so I'm gonna just grab his stuff out of the cooler. I'm gonna grab 2 bunches of the salmon parrot tulips, which are really insane right now. With any flower, you want to cut it and then leave it for 24 hours so that it can hydrate and not have other demands on it. You want to get the heat off it as fast as possible. So even if we're sending something out and we're cutting it for a designer, we cut it the day before and then condition it for a day in the dark, cold, so that then they can work with it, they can play with it out of water. And we do that for our CSA members too, so that everything arrives fully hydrated. So that'll mean the stems are nice and strong, and the flowers have gotten a good drink. And they actually have to learn to drink from a bucket rather than, from the earth.
And just then, one of Anne's customers pulled in for a fresh flower pickup.
Hi. Good, how are you?
My name is David Strout. I just opened a flower and apothecary shop in Saugerties, New York. Catch me when you can at 98 Partition Street. And I do have a very small flower growing operation, and I'm trying to source more of my flowers locally, so Anne came to the rescue this week. I do, full service florals at my store. I make skincare products and candles, and I have, antiques and vintage furniture and stuff and artwork. It's kind of like figuring it out. I just opened in April, so seeing what works and, trying to make it cozy and inviting. This is the hardest part, trying to figure out how to arrange things so that they don't spill.
I know.
Looks like you're set up pretty well for that with the bins.
Yeah, the problem is my driving.
Yeah, windows closed, AC on.
Yeah, I'm very excited to use these this weekend, so thank you so much.
Cool, yeah.
I do like to always have fresh stuff in the store. I don't really sell old flowers, which, a lot of customers come in and complain about that. So having local flowers, you're already 10 steps ahead.
Totally.
And then, just getting them right in and treating them well. It's so nice to be confident that you're giving someone something that's going to last. Thanks again.
All right.
Not only does Crespell grow local flowers, they employ local people.
We like to provide jobs that pay decently to folks who want to do work where they're, really connected to the earth and their bodies and their physical, and they have a tangible product. And, there's a lot of self-esteem, I think, that comes out of actually producing something and seeing it from seed or tuber to flower. And I would say the part that makes me happiest is just seeing people so excited. That's what makes all of the crazy hard work that we go through growing these things worth it.
Learn more at Crespell.com or click the link in the show notes. Thanks to Anne Hall and to our sponsors, the Catskill Mountain News, Hanford Mills, and the Catskill Mountains Scenic Byway. Catscast is a free bi-weekly production of Silver Hollow Audio. If you want to make a contribution to the show, just click Donate at catscast.com. We'd also love it if you reviewed us wherever you listen and recommend us to your friends. I'm Brett Barry. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.